Hi everyone, welcome to the BRCA Boss. I'm Dr. Jamie Pribyl. Today I wanted to show you a couple stretches that I think would be beneficial before surgery. I think a lot of us tend to think about getting strong before surgery, which I think is fantastic, but kind of how I talked about in my last video, our fascia is very important for it to be mobile, for them to be able to get in and do the surgery appropriately. So today I wanted to show you a pectoral stretch because we need to make sure that all of this tissue is able to be open so that they can go in and remove some tissue. So I'm going to show you a couple different options for that. So the first one I'm going to show you is the doorway stretch. That way we can kind of target both at the same time. It's a good time saver. There's a couple different angles that you can do. So the first one that's the easiest that most people are very tight in is going to be a 90-degree angle. So you're going to want to put your forearm up against the doorway, 90-degree angles here and 90 degrees here, and take a step forward. And to show you, I'm going to take a step forward here, and then as I come forward, now what I want to make sure that I do is I want to tuck my pelvis so that I'm not getting an increased lumbar lordosis, which is an arch in your back that can actually hurt your back. So you want to tuck your pelvis kind of like a bad dog. Tuck your tail under, come forward and lean. Now, a lot of people are going to get plenty of a stretch here. If you're really flexible, you can actually turn your shoulders away. Now, I don't want to turn my neck and crank it. I just want to turn my shoulders and face towards the opposite direction. That's a single doorway stretch. Like I said, the reason I like the doorway is because you can do both at the same time. So that's going to look like this. So as you can see, my elbows are not exactly all the way against the door here because it's a larger door frame. So for me, it's more effective for me to do one at a time. Okay, so that's one angle. We want to get other angles of the pec as well. So you can go high. Same thing, you want to watch the arch in your back, and you can go low. So depending on where you're tight is where you're going to want to hold it. You can do all three angles. I would say hold anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. In this area, your arms might start to go numb because you have a bunch of nerves that travel underneath the pec major here. So it's okay if they go numb. If they go numb to the point you can't handle it, go ahead and stop, and you can just do multiple repetitions. So like I said, goal would be for about a minute. That's going to get the longer stretch. That's really going to stretch out that fascia. If you're really tight, I mean, you can hold it up to 3 minutes if you feel comfortable. Okay, so here's another option to stretch out the chest and the pecs. If you don't like the doorway or you just don't feel like it gets the right line of pull, there's another option. If you have a foam roller, which I have right here next to me, I can go ahead and put a link in the comments to an Amazon link where you can find one. I like to use it. It really kind of mobilizes my upper back as well as stretches both of my pecs at the same time. So I'm going to try to sit on this foam roller. There's really no finesse of laying down onto it, but you want to make sure that there's enough there that supports your head. You don't want your head falling off the foam roller. Once you're here, once again, kind of tuck your pelvis so that your back is not super arched on it. And you want to come up and just come down. Now, right here, you might feel kind of a good stretch. And so if you do, go ahead and hang out. Same thing, you can hang out here for 30 seconds to a minute. You can do some arm patterns where you just kind of come up and down. This is kind of more like an active release. And just kind of do what feels good for you. You can come up, I call these swimmers. You come up and around. My shoulder just popped. And that's totally normal. If you don't have a shoulder injury, shoulders are mobile joints and they tend to pop. If it's not painful, I'm not too worried about it. If it is super painful, you could have a shoulder problem. And you can come up here. See, this is where I'm a little bit tighter, and so I just kind of like to hang out here because it just feels like a really good stretch. Okay, so another stretch that I think is very, very important to get ready for the surgery is a hip flexor stretch. If you think about, they're going to be removing some tissue here in our stomach, and that's going to shorten us here, and that's going to make us really, really contracted, and we're not going to be able to stand up for a little while. So that's really going to shorten our hip flexors. So we want them as lengthened as possible going into surgery. So a couple different ways to do this. I prefer to stand. A lot of people prefer it kneeling, so I'm going to show you both. Standing, it takes out the quad. If you're really tight in your quads, it's hard to feel the stretch when you're kneeling. So when I do the standing one, so you just want to stand in a nice lunge here. Okay, so you want your pelvis aiming forward. So once again, you get in that lunge. You can have your heel on the ground, but if you're tight in the calves, you're going to feel it in the calves and you're not going to feel it in the hip flexor. So it's okay to bring that heel up off the ground. Make sure your pelvis is rotated forward towards the front of the room, not to the side. And then go ahead and tuck that tail like I said before. And then you want to bend the front knee. You should feel it right through here in the right front leg if your right leg is back. If you don't, you can actively engage that glute to actively pull that leg back. And then I feel a nice stretch here through the front. Once again, you can hold this. I would recommend this 30 seconds to a minute, if you can for a minute, but it is a nice little quad contraction here, so it can kind of be a workout. The modification, like I said, is kneeling. So once again, it's a lunge. Put your knee down on the ground, toes down, pelvis. So right here, my pelvis wants to rotate towards the side of the room. I'm going to pull it forward. I'm going to tuck my tail under, so it's a little pelvic tilt, and then I'm going to lean forward. And so right there, I kind of feel in the hip flexor, but for me, I really feel it in the quad. That's why I prefer standing, but everybody is different, so try them out, see what works for you. Also, while I'm down here, you know, that stretches the hip flexors directly, but we actually want to try to stretch our abdomen and make sure that all this tissue is as flexible and stretchable as possible, as they're going to be doing a lot of work there. So I'm going to come down here. There's a couple different ways. So this is mini cobra. As I come down, I'm going to tuck my elbows here, and I'm going to push up. Okay, some people might already feel a stretch there. I kind of feel a stretch in my back, but it's also stretching through the front of my stomach area. It's not enough for me, so I'm going to come actually up onto my hands and arch my back, and that's going to stretch my hip flexors as well as that tissue right there from my stomach. So once again, hold this for 30 seconds to a minute. You can do it a couple times a day. So the way that fascia and connective tissue works is that if you're tight anywhere, it's going to affect elsewhere. So if you're tight in your quads, it could affect this surgery. If you're tight in your hamstrings, that as well could affect this surgery. If you're tight in your calves, that as well can affect anything. It's all connected. We're all one body. We're not divided into different pieces. So those are just some key stretches that I think are really imperative to do right before surgery. But if you know that you're tight in an area that maybe I didn't talk about today, please make sure you stretch that out, because like I said, people tend to think about strengthening for this exercise, but I don't think a lot of people tend to think about the fascia and the connective tissue, and I do think it's really important. So once again, like I said, a yoga class is fantastic because they really kind of target areas that you didn't even know that you were tight in. Pilates is also a fantastic exercise. They do a ton of core strengthening as well as lengthening and stretching. So I hope this helps. I hope you guys like my content, and if you do, please subscribe to the link below, and there's also a little bell that you can click that will alert you every time I post. Thanks for watching.